Whenever I take my girls to the grocery store, they're like little Walmart graders, but like super intense ones. They never blink. They get that from me. And their patience and persistence in relation to their greater responsibilities is just remarkable. They will say hi to that 20-some-year-old guy that's just there to buy a frozen pizza and doesn't want to talk to anyone. They will say hi to him until he acknowledges their existence. And if we're in a long line like at Aldi, the people on either side of us better be cool because they're gonna know where we live by the time we check out. Hey and welcome. I'm so happy you're here to join us as we continue our homeschool preschool journey, working through Blossom and Roots Early Years 1 curriculum. This is week 11. If this is your first time here, I'm Amanda, and I hope that you come back to join us every week as we do this thing. So be sure to like and subscribe if you so please. All right, so let's just jump right in with nature study. Our project for this week was to create a cloud log. So the curriculum suggested using 5 sheets of paper, 1 for each day, but I ended up just dividing up one of her nature journal entries instead. For some reason, she just didn't want to put that much time into this activity, so I'm really glad that I did it that way. Basically, we just checked on the clouds each day in the morning, usually from the dining room window, and then again around dinner time. We talked about how the clouds can tell us what kind of weather's coming, but really for most of the week, they weren't telling us. So with as much of a bad rep as Pittsburgh gets for its weather, we sure did have an absolutely beautiful week. It was quite awesome, but for the purpose of this cloud study, it was also quite boring, right? Like morning after morning, we just had clear blue skies. And then again in the evening, not a cloud in sight. We finally caught a little hazy cloud action the one day on our walk. So she drew in some blue sky at the top of that entry and left the lower portion blank to create clouds with the negative space. And then the last day, finally, we had what we needed to really get something fun and interesting out of this lesson. So we finished this up on a Saturday, and there were these nice big fluffy clouds all through the sky. Perfect. And we talked about what this meant for the weather, and then we decided to close the windows before we went out to run some errands. And thank goodness for that. We were having a little snack in the back of the car at some point, and these great big raindrops started to fall just as soon as I got the girls back in their seats. Like, it was the best timing ever. And it was also a really, really great place to be for this lesson. In the car with lots of windows, so we could see that there were like all these fluffy clouds and blue skies when we looked straight ahead, but then you just pivot a bit and we were essentially like one of those cartoon characters that stuck under their own little rain cloud. That was fun. We got to sort of talk about what things look like and what that meant for the weather. This cloud log entry was way cooler, and she was happy to finally do something a little bit different with these big clouds and the dark rain clouds and then the blue sky. And for the rest of the week before this, I just set out this little cup for her with blues that she could choose from to fill out her logs, just trying to make it fun and also easy because it was something that she didn't seem like she really wanted to do. And coloring those boxes blue in the end just got really old really quick. And I didn't even bother asking her to fill out the evening boxes for most of the days since they were all just the same thing. So in the end, I'd recommend doing something similar to what we did with this smaller log instead of those 5 big sheets of paper. Doing this twice a day for 5 days, that's a lot of space for little hands to cover. And this made it much more manageable. To make this easier for you, I am including this little cloud log printable that will be linked down below. It's not something that we used, but it's something that I think would be perfect to use for this activity. So be sure to check that out. It's free. And if you do use it, do me a solid and tag me on Instagram at Foursquare Schoolhouse. One of our math and science activities for the week was to make a train with chairs and stuffed animals in order to practice ordinal numbers. So I meant to do this at some point during the day one day, but it just didn't get done. I just proposed a quick, simple train activity up in our bedroom, just as we were kind of winding down that night. And when I say quick, I mean that was my intention for it to be quick, but in reality, it lasted through most of the evening. So I just sort of planted the seed for this activity, and then she just took over right away. It's kind of the opposite of that last activity that she wasn't really into. This one was just everything to her. She loved it. We did this activity play on a little bench against the wall, so that was the train, and we lined up some dolls and stuffies that were in a nearby basket and just ran with it. And we all ended up being on the train at some point, and there were lots of stuffies stuck in there too. So we got to practice ordinal numbers up to about 10, I think. She extended on this a lot. Like, she went and got a hat to be her conductor hat, and eventually our little tower fan ended up in the front as the smokestack. And then she put her Rapunzel hat on top of that to be the smoke. And then she got this little fishing rod to be her like whistle pole thingy. And it was a whole thing. And she had so much fun, and it took little to no effort on my part. All I had to do was basically just make a suggestion to do this and then to practice those numbers with her. Easy peasy. The other math and science activity for the week was to play I Spy with shapes and colors outdoors. So we did this a bit when we were out on the porch at one point, but our view is really kind of limited there. So we ended up taking the show on the road, literally, and we played on our walk instead. And I took the double stroller for this just so she could just kick back and relax and focus on playing and noticing. We are no strangers to I Spy, so this was just a simple, casual way for us to practice shapes and colors. But I really do appreciate the note in the parent guide that explains that kids might not play the way they should at this age. I do really hate that word, should. Blech. But it said that they're still learning and they're still getting lots of beneficial exposure to vocabulary out of this. And this is so true. Like, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but I actually have a background in child development. Like, my degree is in applied developmental psychology, and I worked with children and families for about 15 years before accidentally becoming a stay-at-home mom. And this has been incredibly helpful to me as a parent, having this background, because it's given me this really good, solid understanding of and respect for the pace at which children develop and the variations in this pace, in their development. And there's beauty in this variation, you know, and you can recognize that. You can start by scrapping the word should, like F should, and surround yourself with positive messages like the one that this curriculum just included that we just talked about, messages that encourage you to ditch the should and find the good. Ugh, I seriously might make t-shirts. We studied another Mary Cassatt piece in art this week, Young Thomas and His Mother. I don't know why I feel like I have to say it like that, but we talked about the shapes, colors, people, who they were, what they were doing, how they were feeling, you know, all that stuff. And I love that when I asked Lucy how they were feeling, she said happy. So I wasn't expecting that, you know, and I asked her about it, and then we had this little discussion about that, about how we feel and how that can be reflected in our facial expressions. And she said that she feels happy sometimes even when she's not smiling, and that people don't have to smile to feel happy. I love it. That's my girl, dropping some social emotional wisdom. To extend on this, we created a picture with feelings faces. So I prepared everything for this in advance so she could just hop up to the table and do it. I drew a little grid on a box piece with chalkboard marker, and then I cut out some oval shapes to have her glue on there as the heads. And we just did 4 for this, just 4 faces, 4 emotions. She chose those 4 emotions and then used her art supplies to reflect them on the blank faces. She started with the happy face because I think that was fresh in her mind, and her happy face, as you will see, does not have a smile. She also made a no face, which, as everyone knows, is a very important face, as well as a mad face and a sleepy face. I just love the variety here. I love the faces that she chose. To make the labeling portion of this activity a little bit more fun, I just broke out my good old Dymo label maker. It's just this really simple, fun tool that makes these cute little kind of retro looking labels that we can use for just about anything. Like, I label stuff in the kitchen with this, in my planner, different crafty things, and I will link the one that I have in the description just in case you want one too. We used our handy dandy little instrument printable here again this week while we listened to Florence Price, and then we also hopped onto YouTube to watch some actual performances of her work. And it was fun to see the instruments actually being played by real people, to see how many of them there were, how they're all arranged, how the instruments are held. And then we did like a total 180 for the next activity, which was an animal freeze dance. So I just kind of squeezed this one in there one day while we were playing in their bedroom, and instead of doing the whole like musical chairs kind of thing that the curriculum suggests, I just let it be easy and I put on the animal freeze dance by the Kaboomers and let them go to town. We were able to tap into our vast reserve of Cheerios for this week's kindness and connectivity lesson to make our cereal necklaces. And I just tied a bit of embroidery thread onto a crochet needle, and then I tied the other end to a Cheerio. And we did this over the weekend, so it was really nice, and she got to just kind of, you know, chill out, sit back by the fire, just happily stringing these Cheerios, practicing those fine motor skills. And then as a bonus, you know, she got to eat it, of course. And I posted a picture of this on Instagram at one point and said that it feels like I'm training her to attend beer festivals in the distant future, you know, with the pretzel necklaces. And who knows, maybe we'll do pretzels next time. This lesson was definitely a hit, and it was also just really nice to have this calm activity to do in the backyard, like a time to sort of just sit and exhale to balance all the big activity that typically happens out there. And I'm definitely going to keep this one in my back pocket for other times. For our read together this week, we dove into the world of little critter books on YouTube. So I did request this book from the library, but then of course I didn't make it there in time to pick it up. So there were plenty of little critter stories available on YouTube. And this week's book, I Was So Mad, was a really great one, I think, for this age. So after watching Little Critter's ideas get shot down time after time in the book, we talked about like what he wanted, what he was doing, and why he was being told no. She really demonstrated a great understanding of this, so we just sort of built on that by making some connections between the book and her life. So times that we have told her no, what those things were, or why we might have said no. And then we also talked about anger. So she did say that she feels different ways when we say no, like disappointed, frustrated, you know, there's a myriad of emotions that can go with that. But we did hone in specifically on anger just because of this book, on feeling angry or feeling mad. We talked about times that she feels angry. We talked about times that I feel angry. Like everyone feels anger. We, of course, connected this to a Daniel Tiger song. If you're not familiar with it, he has a song about everything that you could possibly need, and they will worm their way into your brain and stay there forever, but they will also be there exactly at the moments that you need them. So it's all good. Now, the other part of this lesson was to make a feelings collage. And this is actually the second time that this curriculum has encouraged me to use magazines that I absolutely do not have. It said you could also do like a Google image search to find pictures and then print those out and then cut them out and then paste them to create a collage. And honestly, I would have preferred to have done it that way because Lucy really likes to cut and to use glue, but we were just kind of short on time. So we did this on my iPad instead. So I just brought up a split screen with Chrome on one side and the Pages app on the other with a blank document. And you can just sort of search for images. And then if you long press with your finger, you can just drag and drop, put them wherever you want. So we did it that way. I just sort of asked her to give me some ideas, things to search for. And she did that. She said she wanted to search for like Daniel Tiger feelings, kids feelings, Dino Dana. And we created a collage from that after it was done, I did print it out. So she has a hard copy to hold on to. We just kind of, you know, skipped that middle process that I do think would have been beneficial. I don't recommend skipping it, but if you need to, this is a good way to go about doing this lesson. Our kitchen classroom activity for this week was pretty cool. We were tasked with finding an unusual ingredient that we wouldn't normally use. So we went to Aldi for this one, and there wasn't really anything in the produce department, which was kind of my first thought. That was disappointing. Had we gone to Trader Joe's, we probably would have found something there, but there wasn't anything there that was especially unusual. You know, they just kind of have your standard fruits and veggies typically. So we just kind of browsed around a bit, and the girls ate cheese sticks and pretended they were, you know, Walmart graters. We landed on this big bag of almond flour, and that was a totally new one for me. I've used almond meal here and there, but never almond flour. And then I went to Pinterest to find a recipe. Basically, I had two criteria for this recipe. One, I wanted it to be embarrassingly easy, like just so simple. And two, I wanted it to be as healthy as possible. And I found just that in these almond flour banana cookies. So I'm going to link that recipe down in the description if you'd like to try it. They really weren't half bad. Like, you have to frame it the right way. So if you think about them like an almond flour concoction of sorts, like not really as a cookie. They're different, but they were good. And it was just a few ingredients. No added sugar, oil, stuff like that. It was just banana, almond flour, baking powder, salt, and vanilla. And I got out the cinnamon to put in there, but then I just completely forgot about it. I think that would have kind of made them better too. And we did end up also putting a few sprinkles on top to add some flair. The recipe calls for chocolate chips, and I thought about adding chocolate chips. I have a bag of mini chocolate chips in the refrigerator. I usually have a bag of mini chocolate chips in the refrigerator, but I'm trying really hard right now to not eat them all, because I'll go through like a bag of those a week that I just swing by the fridge every time I open the stinking door for anything, and I put a handful of these chocolate chips into my face. I didn't want to open the chocolate chips. That's where I'm going with this. And they were still really good without them. So we finished these up in the morning, and then we had a little tea party when Derek came down for his lunch break. And now we know a little bit about almond flour. And that's it. Make sure that you grab your free printable, like, subscribe, do the things, and join us next week as we try to explain all of the vegetables that are actually fruits.